Hello, everybody. Of all the stories that I've done, the one that's gotten the most comments and seems to be most popular have been the ghost stories. Why? I don't know. So here I am today for our last real week of school with not one, not two, but three ghost stories. I'll start off from silly and end up as really creepy. So the first one that I want to tell you is called The Ghostly Maid. Once, long ago, there was a family. Just a dad and a son, for their mom just recently died. It was a sad time for all, and the dad decided that it might be best for he and the son to move to a brand new town and find a brand new house. So they moved hundreds of miles away, thinking that they would be safe from the memory of their wife and mom who had just passed away. Well, they got to the town and were looking around, and they saw a for sale sign in the yard of the most beautiful house, and it had a very cheap price. So they began to ask around. They introduced themselves and they said, "Hey, we've just moved. Can you tell us any more about this house?" And the neighbors just shook their head and said, "The house has been on sale for years. No one wants to buy it because people say it's haunted." Well, the dad and son replied, "We don't believe in ghosts. That's just silly." So, the very next day, they decided to buy it and they moved in. Well, they went to sleep for the first night in the house and there was no problem at all. And the boy laughed at his dad and said, "Dad, see, I knew the ghosts weren't real." And the dad laughed and said, "You know what, son? I'm going to take a shower. Why don't you go downstairs and get ready and eat some breakfast?" So, the boy went downstairs and sure enough, he goes into the kitchen and there is a nice old woman making breakfast for him. She gives him nice bacon and sausage and eggs and pancakes and even makes him a very fresh squeezed glass of orange juice. And the boy eats it up and says, "Thank you, that was delicious." And the old lady says, "Well, you're quite welcome. But remember, sometimes there can be ghosts around here, so you better be careful." So the little boy says, "Sure, thank you for the advice," and goes back upstairs to tell his dad about what happened about this exciting new adventure. So he goes upstairs into the bathroom, knocks on the door, and said, "Hey, Dad, you never told us we were going to have a maid. She just made me breakfast." And the dad froze and said, "Son, we don't have a maid. Let's get out of here." So, who do you think that maid was? I mean, she didn't seem very mean, did she? She probably helped him out and made breakfast. Would you eat breakfast from a ghost? I probably wouldn't. I'd probably faint. But the next story is called The Yellow Ribbon. Now, you might have read stories similar to this, but this one's really creepy. Once there was a girl named Jane, and Jane was like every other girl, except for one strange thing. She always wore a yellow ribbon around her neck, whether it was springtime or wintertime or summer or fall. There was always that yellow ribbon. Now, Jane's next door neighbor, Johnny, always thought it was strange that she wore a yellow ribbon. Now, Johnny was Jane's best friend, and every day Johnny would ask and say, "Jane, why do you wear that yellow ribbon?" Now, he'd ask and went on for years this way until they were in high school. And Johnny realized, you know what? I kind of really like Jane. And so they hung out a lot and they started dating. And every so often, Johnny would say, "Jane, can you please tell me about the yellow ribbon? Why are you wearing it? It doesn't even match your clothes." And Jane would just say, "Don't you love me? Can't you just be patient? I'll tell you one day what it means." And so Johnny was patient, even though he wondered what on earth this yellow ribbon would mean. So on their wedding day, he thought for sure Jane would tell him. She did not. They got married, and Johnny realized, maybe the yellow ribbon wasn't so important at all. What's really important is that he loves Jane and Jane loves him. Well, years pass, and they have 4 kids. And the kids would sometimes ask and say, "Daddy, why does Mommy wear the yellow ribbon?" And Johnny could only say, Mommy's never told me, but it's better not that we not ask her. Let's just make sure Mommy feels comfortable and she can wear the yellow ribbon. Well, years pass and the kids are grown up, and it's just Jane and Johnny at home. And they were very happy together until one day Jane got very sick and was laying in her bed. And Johnny could see that she was almost dead. And it bothered him so much that she just never told him about the yellow ribbon. So he decided that he would ask one last time about the yellow ribbon. And he said, "Sweetie, I've been waiting since we were kids to know about the yellow ribbon. Will you be able to tell me now?" Jane looked at Johnny weakly and nodded and said, "Yes, it is time that you know about the yellow ribbon." She said, "You may pull the ribbon now, and I will tell you what it means." So Johnny looked at her and was like, "Well, that's confusing." And she just said, "Please hold my hand." So they held hands, and Johnny pulled the knot of the yellow ribbon. And as soon as the knot came loose, Jane's head fell right onto the floor. What? How could a yellow ribbon keep a person's head on? Let me see. Check your next. Do any of you have a yellow ribbon? Maybe like a blue or green one too. Isn't that weird? Could you imagine being married to somebody for so long whose head is just held on by a yellow ribbon? That's creepy. Real creepy. The last one, it's the creepiest one, is called the clown statue. Once there was a babysitter, and she was a teenager. Her name was Sarah, and she was babysitting for a very rich family who owned a giant mansion out in the countryside. And so she babysat for them often, and she got to the house, and the strangest thing happened. The parents said, "Now, Sarah, thank you for babysitting. I just want to let you know the kids have been having nightmares about this like clown in their room at night, and we don't know what's going on. So if they start like crying or freaking out about that, they've already told us it's fine. They've just been having nightmares, so that's okay." So she said, "Well, that's pretty odd. Whatever." And she said, "Well, that's fine. Have fun on your date." And the parents said one more thing. So they said, "Sarah, after you put the kids to bed at night, you just need to stay in the basement. There's TV, there's food, there's anything you need. We just don't want you wandering through the rest of the rooms in our house because some of the stuff is kind of expensive." And so she thought, well, that's kind of weird. They've never asked that before, but oh, sure, I'll stay in the basement after I put the kids to bed. Well, they had fun babysitting, and she put the kids to bed. She gave them a kiss goodnight, tucked them in, and said, "Don't worry, the clown's just in your imagination. It's not real." And she goes downstairs and makes herself a bowl of popcorn, turns on the movies, and she notices something in the corner of the room. It's a clown statue. She thinks to herself, that clown statue does look pretty creepy. Wow, I wonder if the kids are just imagining things. So she's sitting there with her popcorn watching the movie, and she keeps looking at the clown in the corner of the room, and this statue is really creepy. So she gets a blanket and covers it. But she's just really creeped out and does not want to be in the basement anymore. So she gets on the phone and she calls the parents and say, "Hey, I am sorry. You said that I should stay in the basement of the house, but there's this clown statue down here that is really creeping me out. Do you mind if I go upstairs?" And the dad's voice froze. He said, "Sarah, we don't have a clown statue. Get the kids and get out of the house now." And Sarah turned. The clown was gone, and all that was left on the floor was the blanket. Oh, snap.